September 27, 1941. North Atlantic, 800 miles east of Newfoundland. Captain Lieutenant Engelbert Endres peered through the periscope of U-46. His target, a slow-moving cargo vessel, S. Patrick Henry. The ship's welded hull gleamed in the morning light. No rivets, no traditional shipyard craftsmanship. Endres recorded in his war diary, now archived at the German Federal Military Archive, another American emergency freighter, welded construction. They build them like tin cans. He did not attack. Fuel was precious. The ship appeared crude, hastily assembled, not worth a torpedo. By war's end, vessels like the Patrick Henry would carry 75% of all cargo shipped to Allied forces overseas. This is the story of the ships German submariners mocked, and how those ships won the Atlantic. In 1940, Nazi Germany controlled Europe's Atlantic coastline from Norway to the Pyrenees. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded over 300 U-boats. His strategy: starve Britain into submission by sinking merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. The mathematics were simple. British shipyards could produce approximately 1 million tons of merchant shipping per year. German U-boats were sinking 4 to 5 million tons annually. Winston Churchill would later write in his memoirs, published in 1951, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." Then, on September 27, 1941, a ship launched from a Baltimore shipyard in just 244 days. The SS Patrick Henry, the first of a new class of vessel, the Liberty ship. German naval intelligence dismissed them. Welded hulls instead of rivets, prefabricated sections, mass production techniques borrowed from automobile factories. By 1943, American shipyards were launching 3 Liberty ships per day. This is how industrial capacity transformed naval warfare, how mockery turned to desperation, and how 2,710 identical cargo ships broke the Atlantic blockade. December 1940. Britain stood alone. The Ministry of War Transport calculated the nation needed 7 million tons of shipping to maintain minimum food supplies and war material. The fleet totaled 5.2 million tons and shrinking. British shipyards operated at maximum capacity. Traditional ship construction required 12 to 18 months per vessel. Skilled riveters worked in teams, fitting each plate by hand. Quality craftsmanship. The method unchanged for decades. Jean Monnet, head of the Anglo-French Coordinating Committee, traveled to Washington in October 1940. His mission: convince American shipbuilders to mass-produce cargo vessels. He met with Henry Kaiser, a construction magnate who had never built a ship. Kaiser studied British designs. The Ocean-class freighter, 441 feet long, 7,200 tons capacity, coal-fired engine, reliable, traditional, slow to build. Kaiser proposed modifications: replace rivets with welding, construct ships in prefabricated sections, use assembly line methods. The Maritime Commission approved a modified design in January 1941. Admiral Emery Land, chairman of the Maritime Commission, announced the program at a press conference on February 24, 1941. He stated, as recorded in Maritime Commission minutes, "We will build ships by the mile and cut them off by the yard." German naval intelligence received reports within weeks. The assessment, preserved in Kriegsmarine archives, noted, "American Emergency Construction Program, welded hulls. Mass production proposed, quality uncertain. Unlikely to affect Atlantic operations before 1943. The first keel was laid at the Bethlehem Fairfield Shipyard in Baltimore on April 30, 1941. President Franklin Roosevelt attended the launching ceremony on September 27, 1941. He christened the vessel SS Patrick Henry, named after the Revolutionary War patriot. In his address, archived in the Roosevelt Presidential Library, he declared, "This is a ship built by Americans for all free men. Construction time, 244 days. By traditional standards, remarkably fast. By the standards Kaiser would soon establish, impossibly slow." The Patrick Henry departed Baltimore on December 28, 1941. Destination: Alexandria, Egypt. Cargo: war supplies. The ship survived the voyage. So did the next 50 Liberty ships. German U-boat commanders began to notice. January 1942. Germany declared unrestricted submarine warfare along the American East Coast. Operation Paukenschlag. Drumbeat. 5 U-boats departed French bases on December 18, 1941. Their orders, preserved in German naval archives: sink merchant shipping within sight of American cities. U-123, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hardigan, arrived off New York on January 13, 1942. American cities remained fully lit. Navigation lights operated normally. Merchant ships traveled independently, without escort. Hardigan recorded in his war diary, "It is almost unbelievable. Conditions here are like peacetime. In 6 months, U-boats sank 397 Allied merchant ships along the American coast. Over 2 million tons of shipping destroyed. Tankers burned within sight of Miami, Norfolk, Atlantic City." The Kriegsmarine called it the second happy time. Admiral Dunitz calculated in his operational orders, archived at the Bundesarchiv Militararchiv, "If we maintain current sinking rates, Allied merchant capacity will reach critical minimum by October 1942. Britain will be forced to negotiate." The strategy required one critical assumption: Allied shipyards could not replace losses faster than U-boats could sink ships. German intelligence estimated American shipyards might produce 2 to 3 million tons of new shipping in 1942. The projection appeared in Kriegsmarine intelligence summaries from March 1942. The actual figure: 5.3 million tons. The Liberty ship descended from a British design designated the Ocean class. The British had ordered 60 such vessels from American yards in 1940 under the Ocean class program. The Maritime Commission modified the design for mass production. Chief Naval Architect George Sharp led the redesign effort in January 1941. Final specifications, recorded in Maritime Commission documents: length 441 feet, 6 inches, beam 57 feet, depth 37 feet, 4 inches, gross tonnage 7,176 tons, cargo capacity 10,800 deadweight tons. The propulsion system: a single triple expansion reciprocal steam engine, not the most modern technology, not the most efficient, but simple, reliable, easy to manufacture. Maximum speed 11 knots, cruising speed 10 knots. German naval officers reviewing these specifications noted the slow speed. U-boats could travel at 17 knots on the surface. The Liberty ship appeared to be an easy target, but the design contained one revolutionary feature: welded construction. Traditional shipbuilding required teams of skilled riveters. Each rivet had to be individually heated, placed, and hammered. A single Liberty ship would have required over 3 million rivets. Training a riveter took months. Welding required different skills. Training time: weeks instead of months. The workforce could expand rapidly. The Maritime Commission established 18 shipyards across the United States. 6 operated by Henry Kaiser's companies. Others managed by Bethlehem Steel, Todd Shipyards, and various consortiums. Each yard received identical blueprints. Standardization eliminated customization. Every Liberty ship would be identical. Parts were interchangeable. Workers could transfer between yards without retraining. The first ships took 200 to 300 days to complete, but Kaiser studied the process, identifying inefficiencies. He divided construction into prefabricated sections: bow sections, stern sections, midship sections, deck houses, each built separately, then assembled. By late 1942, Kaiser's Richmond Yard No. 2 in California was completing Liberty ships in an average of 45 days. The record, SS Robert E. Peary, launched November 12, 1942. Construction time from keel laying to launch: 4 days, 15.5 hours. Built as a publicity demonstration, the ship proved the potential of mass production methods. German naval intelligence tracked American shipbuilding through multiple sources: neutral shipping observers, press reports, aerial reconnaissance photographs. A Kriegsmarine intelligence summary from May 1942, preserved in German Federal Archives, stated, "American emergency shipbuilding program producing simplified cargo vessels. Welded construction indicates reduced quality standards. Vessels expected to have limited operational lifespan." U-boat commanders received briefings at their bases in Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, and Brest. The message: Liberty ships represented desperate American improvisation. Captain Lieutenant Peter Creamer, commander of U-333, later wrote in his memoir, published in 1984, "We heard about these American emergency freighters. They were supposedly built so quickly that the workers forgot to install proper watertight compartments. Our instructors told us one torpedo would break them in half." The assessment contained partial truth. Early Liberty ships did experience problems with welded hulls. In January 1943, 3 Liberty ships suffered catastrophic hull failures. SS Schenectady broke in half while moored in calm water in Portland, Oregon. The ship was less than 3 months old. Photographs appeared in American newspapers. The ship's 2 halves remained afloat but completely separated. German intelligence received copies of these photographs. The images reinforced existing beliefs about American ship quality. But investigations revealed the cause: brittle fracture in welded steel at low temperatures, not a fundamental design flaw. An engineering problem with a solution. Metallurgists identified the issue: low temperature embrittlement. Steel lost ductility in cold North Atlantic conditions. Cracks propagated rapidly through welded seams. The Maritime Commission implemented fixes, changed steel specifications, added crack arresters, redesigned critical structural elements. By mid-1943, the brittle fracture problem was largely resolved, but German intelligence reports continued to emphasize Liberty ship unreliability. U-boat crews entered the Atlantic, convinced their American opponents sailed in defective vessels. March 1943. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, finally implemented comprehensive convoy systems along the American coast. The delay had been costly. In 1942 alone, German U-boats sank 1,664 Allied merchant ships worldwide. The convoy system operated on proven principles: group merchant ships together, provide naval escorts, force U-boats to attack defended targets. But convoys required escort vessels, destroyers, destroyer escorts, corvettes, all in short supply. The Liberty ship program solved one problem: cargo capacity. But cargo capacity meant nothing if ships couldn't survive the Atlantic crossing. American and British shipyards expanded escort vessel production. The United States launched 565 destroyer escorts between 1943 and 1945. Britain produced corvettes and frigates at similar rates. Technology improved. Radar became standard on escort vessels. High-frequency direction finding HF, DF, called Huff Duff allowed convoy escorts to detect U-boat radio transmissions and locate submarines. Aircraft extended convoy protection. Long-range B-24 Liberators, modified for maritime patrol, closed the air gap in mid-Atlantic where ships previously sailed beyond air cover. And Liberty ships kept launching. February 1943, 92 Liberty ships launched. March 1943, 105 Liberty ships. April 1943, 106 Liberty ships. American shipyards employed over 640,000 workers. Women comprised approximately 20% of the workforce in most yards. At Kaiser's Richmond yards, women represented 27% of workers by late 1943. Rosie the Riveter became the iconic symbol. But in Liberty ship construction, most workers were welders, not riveters. Prefabrication reached extraordinary levels. At Kaiser's Swan Island Yard in Portland, Oregon, entire deckhouses arrived by rail from fabrication plants in Idaho. Cranes lifted complete sections into place. Welders sealed the joints. The process resembled automobile assembly more than traditional shipbuilding. Admiral Land reported to Congress in May 1943, as recorded in congressional testimony, "We are currently producing merchant ships at a rate equivalent to 17 million deadweight tons per year. This exceeds total worldwide merchant shipping sunk in 1942. German naval intelligence received these figures. The numbers seemed impossible. Admiral Dönitz reviewed the reports at his headquarters in Berlin. He ordered intensified U-boat operations, more submarines, more aggressive tactics. If American production had truly reached such levels, the Battle of the Atlantic had entered a new phase. Germany would need to sink ships faster than America could build them. The mathematics that seemed favorable in 1942 now appeared uncertain. Liberty ships received continuous improvements throughout production. Early vessels carried single 3-inch or 4-inch deck guns for defense against surfaced U-boats. By mid-1943, armament increased to one 5-inch gun aft, one 3-inch gun forward, plus 8 20mm anti-aircraft cannons. Gun crews came from the United States Navy Armed Guard. Typically 15 to 25 Navy personnel sailed aboard each Liberty ship, manning the weapons. Degaussing cables wrapped around hulls reduced magnetic signatures, protecting against magnetic mines. The Maritime Commission authorized installation of defensive armament on all merchant vessels. Records from the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations show that by January 1944, 98% of American merchant ships carried Naval Armed Guard crews. Radio equipment improved. Early Liberty ships carried basic commercial radio sets. By 1943, vessels received military-grade radio equipment capable of secure communications with convoy escorts. Radar warning receivers appeared on some vessels by late 1943, alerting crews when German radar swept their positions. Cargo handling evolved. Early Liberty ships used standard cargo booms requiring manual operation. Later vessels received more efficient winch systems. Special variants emerged. Tank-carrying Liberty ships received reinforced decks. Aviation transport versions carried disassembled aircraft. Collier variants specialized in coal transport. The basic design remained unchanged, but these modifications demonstrated flexibility. Most importantly, Liberty ships proved seaworthy. They survived Atlantic storms. They maintained schedules. They reached their destinations. Crews adapted to their quirks. The reciprocating engines shook the entire vessel. The ships wallowed in heavy seas due to flat bottoms. In rough weather, they were uncomfortable. But they sailed. They carried cargo. They survived. And U-boat commanders stopped laughing. May 1943. German U-boats faced catastrophic losses. The month began with 118 operational U-boats in the Atlantic. By May 31st, 41 had been sunk or damaged beyond repair. Admiral Dunnett's withdrew U-boats from the North Atlantic convoy routes on May 24th, 1943. His signal to all submarines, preserved in Kriegsmarine records: all boats proceed westward or southward. Break off operations against convoys. For the first time since 1939, German submarines retreated from the Atlantic convoy lanes. The losses resulted from multiple factors: improved radar on escort vessels and aircraft, better trained escort crews, enhanced anti-submarine tactics, increased numbers of escort vessels. But underlying everything, more Liberty ships meant larger convoys. Larger convoys meant more concentrated escorts. More escorts meant increased defensive firepower. U-boat tactics had relied on wolf-pack attacks. Multiple submarines would converge on a convoy, attacking simultaneously to overwhelm escorts. The tactic worked when convoys consisted of 30 to 40 ships with 4 to 6 escorts. But by mid-1943, convoys often included 60 to 80 ships with 12 to 15 escorts, plus air cover. The mathematics shifted: more targets, but more defenders. The risk-to-reward ratio inverted. Corvettin Caping Peter Dunnett's, son of the admiral, commanded U-954. His submarine was sunk on May 19, 1943, by aircraft from HMS Biter. He did not survive. Admiral Dunnett's noted in his war diary, "Now, at the Bundesarchiv, the enemy has achieved temporary advantage in submarine detection. We must develop countermeasures." But the advantage was not temporary. Allied anti-submarine capabilities would only improve. May 1943 marked the effective end of the U-boat as a strategic weapon. Submarines would continue to operate, continue to sink ships, but never again would they threaten to sever the Atlantic lifeline. And Liberty ships continued to launch. May 1943, 90 vessels. June, 82. July, 77. U-boat commanders returning to French bases reported a new reality. In the middle of the Atlantic, they encountered convoys stretching to the horizon. Dozens of identical ships. Gray hulls, simple construction, each carrying 10,000 tons of cargo. The ships they had mocked now sailed in such numbers that sinking a few meant nothing. For every Liberty ship torpedoed, 3 more launched. Liberty ships carried crews of 44 merchant mariners plus armed guard sailors. The merchant crew operated the vessel. The Navy armed guard manned defensive weapons. Arthur Moore served as an able seaman aboard S. James Withdrew. In an oral history recorded by the U.S. Maritime Service veterans in 1988, he stated, "First time I saw a Liberty ship, I thought it was the ugliest thing afloat. But she was solid. She rode rough, but she was solid." Merchant mariners faced extreme danger. The U.S. Merchant Marines suffered a 3.9% casualty rate during World War II, higher than any military branch except the Marine Corps. When a torpedo struck, crew members had minutes to reach lifeboats. In winter North Atlantic, water temperature hovered near freezing. Survival time, 15 to 30 minutes. Yet merchant mariners continued to sail. William Lundy served aboard SS Richard Hovey as chief engineer. In a 1990 interview archived at the American Merchant Marine Museum, he recalled, "We knew the odds. Every man who sailed the Atlantic in 42 and 43 knew someone who'd been torpedoed. But the ships kept sailing. We kept sailing." Liberty ship voyages typically lasted 30 to 45 days from American ports to Britain. Convoys traveled at the speed of the slowest vessel, usually 8 to 10 knots. Conditions aboard varied. Officers had small private cabins. Ordinary crew shared berthing spaces. Food quality depended on the ship's cook. Most crews were integrated with minimal racial conflict, despite segregation remaining policy in much of the military. Records from the War Shipping Administration show African American mariners served on most Liberty ships, often in skilled positions as engineers, radio operators, and able seamen. Hugh Mozak became the first African American to command a U.S. merchant vessel when he took command of SS Booker T. Washington in October 1942, a Liberty ship. His crew included 18 different nationalities. The ship completed 5 successful voyages, carrying troops and supplies to Europe and North Africa. Armed guard crews formed close bonds with merchant crews despite separate command structures. They shared the same risks. Ensign Richard Kelly commanded the armed guard detail aboard SS Stephen Hopkins. In September 1942, the ship encountered German surface raider Steyr in the South Atlantic. Stephen Hopkins fought back. The merchant crew and the armed guard engaged the more heavily armed German vessel for 20 minutes. The Liberty ship's 4-inch guns scored hits on the raider before Stephen Hopkins sank. Steyr sustained enough damage that the German crew scuttled their own ship shortly after. It was the only American merchant ship to sink a German surface warship during the war. Such actions earned respect. Liberty ships might be ungainly, they might be crude, but their crews proved brave and capable. By the end of 1943, the strategic picture had transformed completely. American shipyards launched 1,896 merchant vessels in 1943, totaling 12.8 million deadweight tons. Of these, 1,299 were Liberty ships. German U-boats sank 3,000 Allied merchant ships between 1940 and 1943. American yards alone replaced those losses in 1943. The surplus began to accumulate. In January 1944, Allied cargo ships transported 1.2 million tons of supplies to Britain. By June 1944, monthly shipments reached 1.8 million tons. The build-up for Operation Overlord, the Normandy invasion, required unprecedented logistics. Between January and June 1944, Allied forces accumulated 2.5 million troops, 11,000 aircraft, and 50,000 vehicles in Britain. Liberty ships carried most of that cargo. The Mediterranean theater opened in 1943 with Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. The operation required transporting 160,000 troops and equipment from North Africa. Liberty ships provided the bulk of transport capacity. Operation Avalanche, the Salerno landings in September 1943, again relied on Liberty ship transport. The Pacific theater demanded different logistics. Longer distances, island-hopping campaigns requiring sustained supply lines across thousands of miles of ocean. Liberty ships proved adaptable. They transported troops, carried ammunition, delivered aviation fuel, and hauled food supplies. Some were converted to emergency repair ships. Others became floating warehouses. The SS Richard Montgomery, loaded with 6,000 tons of munitions, sank near the Thames estuary in August 1944 after running aground. The wreck remains there today, still containing approximately 1,400 tons of explosives. Most Liberty ships survived. Of 2,710 built, 200 were lost to enemy action, weather, or accident during the war. A loss rate of 7.4%. Higher than planners hoped, but far lower than German intelligence had predicted. The ships proved durable enough for their purpose. Win the war, operate for a few years, then retire. Some exceeded expectations dramatically. SS Benjamin Warner completed 11 Atlantic crossings in 21 months, carrying over 100,000 tons of cargo. Fleet replenishment vessels, modified Liberty ships, accompanied Navy task forces, providing fuel, ammunition, and supplies at sea. This allowed combat vessels to remain on station longer. The strategic impact extended beyond simple cargo tonnage. Liberty ships represented surge capacity, the ability to replace losses faster than enemies could inflict them. German strategic planning had assumed industrial limitations. Maximum capacity, choke points, vulnerability. Liberty ships demonstrated that American industrial capacity operated without apparent upper limit. If more ships were needed, more ships appeared. The psychological effect on German naval planning was profound. Admiral Dönitz continued to order U-boats to sea. By mid-1944, submarines carried improved torpedoes, better radar detectors, and snorkel systems allowing underwater operation. But the strategic equation had fundamentally changed. The Battle of the Atlantic was over. Germany had lost. German submariners kept detailed war diaries. These records, preserved in various archives, document the changing reality they faced. Oberleutnant Zur See Herbert Werner commanded U-230. In his memoir published in 1969, he wrote, "By 1944, we knew we could not win. We sailed because we were ordered to sail. We attacked because we were submariners. But we knew." U-boat crew survival rates plummeted. Of 40,000 men who served in German submarines during World War II, 28,000 died, a casualty rate of 70%. The average age of U-boat crew members dropped. By 1944, many commanders were in their early 20s. Crew members might be teenagers. Experience levels fell as veteran submariners died. Training shortened. New U-boats reached operational status faster, but with less prepared crews. The technology improved in some areas. Type 21 submarines, introduced in late 1944, featured high underwater speed, improved battery capacity, and hydraulic torpedo loading. They represented genuine innovation. But they arrived too late and in too few numbers. Only 2 Type 21 submarines conducted combat patrols before Germany surrendered. Meanwhile, Allied anti-submarine measures continued to improve. The British developed the Lee Light, a powerful searchlight mounted on aircraft for night attacks on surfaced submarines. Sonobuoys allowed aircraft to detect submerged submarines. Allied aircraft sank 245 U-boats during the war. Escort carriers, small aircraft carriers converted from merchant hulls or built on cruiser hulls, accompanied convoys. These provided air cover in mid-Atlantic beyond land-based aircraft range. Some escort carriers were converted from Liberty ship hulls. These proved less successful than purpose-built carriers, but demonstrated the Liberty ship's adaptability. By late 1944, crossing the Atlantic in a convoy had become relatively routine. U-boat attacks occurred, but they were rare and often unsuccessful. Otto Kretschmer, Germany's top-scoring U-boat ace, was captured in March 1941. He spent the remainder of the war in Canadian POW camps. In post-war interviews, archived by the U.S. Naval Institute, Kretschmer stated, "By 1943, the Americans were building ships faster than we could count them, much less sink them. The war was decided in their shipyards, not in combat." The statement reflected a reality German naval command understood but could not counter. Industrial capacity decided modern warfare. Technology mattered, training mattered, tactics mattered, but production capacity determined outcomes. Germany built 1,162 U-boats during World War II, an impressive industrial achievement. The United States built 2,710 Liberty ships, plus hundreds of other merchant vessels, plus thousands of naval vessels, plus tens of thousands of aircraft. The comparison illustrated the fundamental strategic imbalance. German U-boat crews faced an opponent that could absorb losses and continue operating. An opponent whose capacity seemed limitless. The mockery had died years earlier, replaced by grim determination, then exhaustion, then resignation. May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. 156 U-boats surrendered to Allied forces. Another 221 were scuttled by their crews. The Battle of the Atlantic ended. Final statistics. Germany sank 3,500 Allied merchant ships and 175 Allied warships. The Allies sank 783 U-boats. American shipyards had launched 5,777 merchant vessels during the war years. Liberty ships comprised 2,710 of these. At war's end, Liberty ships filled harbors worldwide. Surplus vessels awaited disposition. The Maritime Commission began selling Liberty ships to commercial operators. Many continued merchant service. Some sailed under American flag. Others were sold to foreign companies. The Greek merchant marine purchased large numbers of Liberty ships. These vessels formed the backbone of post-war Greek shipping expansion. Italy, Norway, Britain, France, and other nations incorporated Liberty ships into their merchant fleets. Liberty ships participated in the Berlin airlift logistics, carrying coal to German ports. They transported Marshall Plan supplies across the Atlantic during post-war reconstruction. Some received unlikely second careers. Several became fishing factory ships. Others converted to commercial tankers. A few became floating grain storage. The SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien survive today as museum ships. Both are maintained in operating condition. The O'Brien returned to Normandy for the 50th anniversary of D-Day in 1994, crossing the Atlantic under its own power. Most Liberty ships were scrapped between 1960 and 1970. The welded hulls that German submariners mocked had served 20 to 25 years, far longer than the expected wartime-only lifespan. A few Liberty ships remain afloat in various roles. Some serve as breakwaters. Others rest on the seafloor, victims of post-war accidents or weather. The SS Richard Montgomery, sunk in 1944, still contains explosives near the Thames estuary. British authorities monitor the wreck continuously. Salvage is considered too dangerous. Approximately 200 Liberty ships were lost during the war. Of these, roughly 60 were sunk by U-boats. Others fell to mines, aircraft, surface raiders, weather, or accidents. The survival rate, 92.6%. For vessels dismissed as disposable, built rapidly with welded construction, the record proved remarkable. Liberty ships carried 75% of all cargo shipped overseas by American forces during World War II. They transported millions of tons of food, fuel, ammunition, vehicles, and supplies. They sustained the Soviet Union through Lend-Lease shipments to Murmansk. They supplied the British Isles. They enabled offensive operations in North Africa, Italy, France, and the Pacific. Without Liberty ships, Allied strategy collapses. The victory in Europe required an industrial foundation. Liberty ships provided that foundation. Simple, crude, effective. Exactly what was needed. Final production statistics reveal the scale of American industrial mobilization. Between 1941 and 1945, 18 shipyards built Liberty ships. The program employed an average of 250,000 workers at peak production in 1943. Average construction time dropped from 230 days in 1941 to 42 days in 1943. The fastest Liberty ship, SS Robert E. Peary, was assembled in 4 days and 15 hours from Kiel, laying to launch in November 1942. After launch, fitting out required additional weeks, but the demonstration proved mass production principles. Total Liberty ship production cost, approximately $13 billion in 1940s dollars. Average cost per ship, $1.8 million. By comparison, a single Iowa-class battleship cost $100 million, equivalent to 55 Liberty ships. The economic efficiency proved decisive. Britain's economy mobilized nearly completely for war production. German industry operated at high capacity, but American production dwarfed both. The United States produced 297,000 aircraft during World War II. Germany produced 119,000. Japan produced 76,000. The United States built 88,000 tanks. Germany built 67,000. Soviet Union built 105,000. But merchant shipping represented the foundation. Without cargo capacity, weapons could not reach battlefields. Troops could not deploy. Allies could not coordinate. Liberty ships provided that capacity. The Maritime Commission reported to Congress in 1946. As preserved in congressional records, Liberty ship production created the largest merchant fleet in history. American-flagged merchant tonnage increased from 9 million deadweight tons in 1939 to 45 million deadweight tons in 1945. That fivefold increase occurred in 6 years. During wartime, while also building the world's largest navy, German naval planners had assumed industrial limits that did not exist. Admiral Dönitz wrote in his memoirs, published in 1958, "We calculated that sinking 600,000 tons per month would exceed Allied replacement capacity." In 1943, the Americans alone built over 1 million tons per month. Our calculations were obsolete before the war's middle phase. The admission reflected strategic failure. Germany fought a tonnage war, attempted to sink merchant shipping faster than replacement. The strategy required accurate assessment of enemy industrial capacity. German intelligence underestimated American production by a factor of 3. That miscalculation proved fatal to German Atlantic strategy. After the war, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey analyzed German military effectiveness. The survey, published in 1946, included extensive sections on the Battle of the Atlantic. Interviews with German naval officers revealed consistent themes. Captain Zur See Eberhard Gott, chief of operations at U-Boat Command, stated in his interrogation, archived in the National Archives, "By 1944, we knew the battle was lost." But Admiral Dönitz ordered continued operations. The U-boats tied down Allied resources. That was our final purpose. The assessment contained truth. Allied anti-submarine forces required substantial resources. Escort vessels, aircraft, trained personnel, all diverted from other operations. But the strategic balance had shifted irreversibly. British historian John Keegan analyzed the Battle of the Atlantic in his book, The Second World War, published in 1989. He wrote, "The Liberty ship program represented applied industrial genius, simple design, mass production, overwhelming quantity. The combination defeated the most sophisticated submarine force then existing." American naval historian Samuel Eliot Morison, in his official history of U.S. naval operations published in 1947, stated, "Liberty ships were neither beautiful nor particularly seaworthy, but they were available in numbers that made victory possible." The historical consensus recognizes Liberty ships as decisive. But decisiveness emerged from context. Liberty ships alone did not win the Battle of the Atlantic. They required escort vessels for protection, aircraft for coverage, code breaking for intelligence, improved tactics for employment. Liberty ships provided the foundation, the cargo capacity that made everything else possible. Without sufficient shipping, Allied strategy collapses at multiple points. Britain cannot sustain itself. The build-up for D-Day becomes impossible. Mediterranean campaigns fail. Soviet Lend-Lease shipments end. The Pacific War relied less on Liberty ships due to longer distances and different logistics. But even there, Liberty ships participated. They carried supplies to advanced bases. They supported amphibious operations. They maintained supply lines across thousands of miles. Liberty ships were not glamorous. Pilots flying fighters received more recognition. Tank crews captured more attention. Submarines generated more excitement. But wars are won through logistics, through supply, through the unglamorous work of moving millions of tons of cargo across oceans. Liberty ships did that work. The German submariners who mocked them learned this reality through bitter experience. Each patrol brought encounters with more merchant ships, more escorts, more aircraft. The advantage slipped away, then vanished. By war's end, crossing the Atlantic in a Liberty ship was safer than many civilian occupations. The convoy system worked. The escorts prevailed. And Liberty ships sailed on, carrying the supplies that won the war. The Liberty ship program influenced post-war shipbuilding worldwide. Welded construction became standard. Traditional riveting disappeared from large ship construction by the 1960s. The techniques developed for Liberty ships proved superior once initial problems were solved. Prefabrication methods spread throughout shipbuilding. Modern shipyards construct vessels in sections, then assemble them. The process descends directly from Liberty ship construction. Mass production principles influenced other industries. The idea that complex products could be standardized, simplified, and mass-produced spread beyond shipbuilding. Henry Kaiser applied lessons learned to post-war construction projects. His companies built dams, highways, and entire communities using prefabrication and mass production techniques. The Kaiser Permanente healthcare system emerged from medical facilities Kaiser established for shipyard workers. The company-sponsored health plan evolved into one of America's largest healthcare organizations. But the Liberty ship's most important legacy remained strategic. The program demonstrated that industrial capacity could be mobilized rapidly, that traditional manufacturing timelines could be compressed. That quantity had a quality all its own. Soviet military theorists studied American industrial production extensively after the war. The concept of overwhelming opponents through production became central to Soviet military planning. American defense planning emphasized surge capacity, the ability to rapidly expand production during crisis. Liberty ships provided the model. The program also demonstrated limitations of welded construction. The brittle fracture problems, though solved, highlighted that new techniques required careful engineering. Metallurgists developed better understanding of steel behavior at low temperatures. Fracture mechanics became a recognized engineering discipline. Modern structures from ships to bridges benefit from knowledge gained solving Liberty ship problems. Naval architects learned that speed of construction matters. Emergency programs required different designs than peacetime vessels. The Liberty ship's reciprocating engine was obsolete when installed, but it was available. Perfect became the enemy of good enough. These lessons influenced naval construction during the Cold War. When speed mattered more than optimization, designers remembered Liberty ships. Simple, adequate, available. Sometimes that was sufficient. Statistics document ships built and tonnage transported. But people sailed those ships. The U.S. Merchant Marine lost 9,521 personnel during World War II. Out of 243,000 who served, that represented a casualty rate higher than any military service except the Marine Corps. When a torpedo struck, survival depended on location, weather, and luck. SS Paul Hamilton was torpedoed off Algeria on April 20, 1944. The ship carried troops and ammunition. The explosion killed all 580 people aboard. No survivors. SS Leopoldville was torpedoed on December 24, 1944, while carrying American troops to France. The ship sank 6 miles from shore. Poor evacuation procedures and confusion led to 763 deaths among the 2,235 troops aboard. Other ships survived repeated attacks. SS Nathaniel Hawthorne was torpedoed twice in the Mediterranean. Both times, the crew kept the ship afloat and reached port. Merchant mariners received little recognition during the war. They were civilian employees of shipping companies, not military personnel. They received no veterans' benefits until 1988. Congress finally recognized merchant mariners as veterans 43 years after the war ended. Many had died by then. The armed guard sailors manning defensive weapons aboard Liberty ships received military recognition. They were Navy personnel, but they shared the same risks as merchant crews. Families of lost merchant mariners received limited compensation, no death benefits, no government insurance. The men who sailed Liberty ships across torpedo-infested waters did so for wages, not glory. Some were adventurers. Some needed employment. Many were patriots who understood their role mattered. They sailed ungainly ships through dangerous waters. They delivered the cargo that won the war. Their contribution deserves recognition equal to those who served in uniform. September 1941. German U-boat commanders recorded dismissive assessments of American emergency freighters in their war diaries. Welded construction. Simple design. Mass-produced. May 1945. Germany surrendered. The Atlantic belonged to Allied shipping. The transformation occurred across 4 years. From mockery to retreat. From confidence to defeat. 2,710 Liberty ships were built. 1,941 survived the war. Those surviving ships carried more cargo after victory than during the conflict. They sustained post-war reconstruction. They transported Marshall Plan supplies. They rebuilt Europe. The ships German submariners mocked became instruments of recovery. Final statistics demonstrate the scale. Liberty ships transported over 75% of American military cargo during the war. That represented millions of tons of supplies. Tens of millions of individual items. Everything from bullets to bulldozers. They carried 2 million American troops overseas. They brought wounded soldiers home. They transported war brides and refugees. Liberty ships were tools, means to an end. Unglamorous, but essential. When the war ended, most Americans forgot about them. Attention shifted to demobilization and peacetime concerns. Liberty ships faded from public consciousness. But historians and naval analysts understood their significance. In 1995, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers designated the Liberty Ship Program a historic mechanical engineering landmark. The citation, displayed aboard SS Jeremiah O'Brien, reads, "This mass-produced cargo ship was a decisive factor in winning World War II." The assessment is accurate. Germany's strategy aimed to sever Allied supply lines through submarine warfare, sink ships faster than replacement, force Britain to negotiate, prevent American intervention from becoming effective. Liberty ships broke that strategy, not through superior technology, not through brilliant tactics, through numbers, through industrial capacity, through the ability to absorb losses and continue operating. The transformation from mockery to reality took 4 years. But once that reality became clear, the outcome was inevitable. The SS Jeremiah O'Brien participated in the Normandy invasion. The ship made 11 round-trip voyages across the English Channel between June and September 1944, carrying supplies and equipment. After the war, the O'Brien was mothballed with hundreds of other Liberty ships. Most were eventually scrapped. The O'Brien survived through chance. It was preserved, then restored. On June 6, 1994, exactly 50 years after D-Day, The Jeremy O'Brien steamed under its own power across the Atlantic to Normandy, the only large operational vessel from the original invasion force able to return. The voyage took 31 days. The crew consisted of volunteers, including World War II merchant marine veterans. The reciprocating engine, 50 years old, performed reliably. At Normandy, crowds gathered. Veterans saluted. The ungainly cargo ship received recognition decades overdue. Today, the O'Brien rests in San Francisco, maintained as a museum and memorial. Visitors can tour the cargo holds, engine room, and crew quarters. The ship conducts occasional cruises in San Francisco Bay, demonstrating that Liberty ship technology still functions. The SS John W. Brown, based in Baltimore, performs similar service. These two ships preserve history that otherwise would exist only in documents and photographs. German U-boat pens still stand at French Atlantic ports, massive concrete structures built to protect submarines. They are museums now, monuments to a failed strategy. The Battle of the Atlantic was won through many factors: code-breaking, radar, escort vessels, aircraft, tactics, training, but underlying everything, cargo capacity, the ability to move supplies across oceans, to sustain forces overseas, to absorb losses and continue. Liberty ships provided that capacity. German submariners learned to respect them. Some learned too late. The ships they mocked broke their blockade. 2,710 identical vessels. Simple design. Mass production. Exactly what was needed to win the war.